Hey writer, if you're ready to level up, then buckle up. Get your pen and paper ready. It's time for another episode of the Art and Business of Writing podcast.
Hello guys, welcome back to another edition of the Art and Business of Writing podcast. I am your host, Chris Jones, where today I am joined by my guest, CM Healy. CM Healy currently lives in Mesquite, Texas with his wife, dog, and 2 giant cats, where he teaches high school chemistry. When he's not busy writing, he enjoys building Lego sets, playing video games, reading comic books, The Flash is his favorite, and watching TV with his best buddy, his wife. He earned the Distinguished Award of Eagle Scout during high school and went on to obtain his Master's in Child Development from Oklahoma State University. He has been working with and entertaining children of all ages ever since. P.S. He loves to wear fun socks, and you're going to learn about what that's all about on this episode. So without further ado, CM Healy. Hey, welcome to the show, CM.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, no. So one thing in your bio that I love is it seems that you're a DC Comics guy.
Just a little bit.
Yeah,
just a little bit.
Oh,
yeah, just a little bit. Yeah. No, I grew up, I started collecting comics when I was in high school. One of my friends lent me his Flash comics, and this was right about the time. I don't know if you know who Mark Waid is. He's been kind of out of the picture for a while, but he really redefined my favorite character, which is Wally West, not the guy in the CW. I love him, don't get me wrong, but the DC really screwed up my favorite character by bringing in some other Wally West. I'm like, just give him a different name. But yeah, so I've been into DC. I collected Image comics. I don't know if you remember those.
I do remember those, yeah.
They were back
Spawn,
in the day. It was
guys,
fun because they had Image and Variant. And was it Variant or Valiant? I can't remember. Anyways, and my friends and I were trying to decide which one was going to last. And of course I won because I knew Image had the talent like Todd McFarlane, and they got Jim Lee in there for a couple of them. So yeah, super big DC fan, super big. I wish they'd do something better with the movies like kind of Marvel did, but it's a different world. It's a different thing. So
It is. I always tell my son, I'm like, if DC would just focus on their animation is second to none. If they just focus on animation, I'd be happy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I watched Batman growing up, and then of course the Justice League cartoons and all that stuff. So
very nice. So you mentioned growing up reading comics. Which scene, The Flash is your favorite now? What was your favorite as a child?
I don't really remember if I had like a favorite. I know when the Flash TV series came out with John Wesley Shipp, like the original.
Oh yeah,
when he was Barry Allen. Before, like they had like the super cool digital effects, and the way to make him look fast was to like speed up the tape. And so you got to see. I'll never forget. There's a part where he's like tying this guy up, and the guy is like trying to sit as still as he possibly can, but he kind of jerks a little bit here and there and stuff like that. So, but they did a good job. I actually got to meet John Wesley Shipp at a comic convention one time and got him to sign a comic book of mine. So that was pretty cool. So it's probably always been the Flash. I've always been a fast runner. I just didn't know I was a hidden Flash fan for a while.
Nice. So, I also feel like, you and I are similar where we're kind of engaged, with our inner child pretty good. I was looking at some of the stuff you were talking about playing with Legos and video games. What was your favorite game system growing up?
Hands down, Nintendo. I started with Atari 2600. I was lucky I had a younger brother, and just every time the new system came out, Nintendo was the first one, and we just kind of stuck with it. I fell deeply in love with Zelda. I'm a hardcore RPG kind of type guy. I play Dungeons and Dragons to this day. I bought a Switch a couple of years ago. I haven't had time to play the new Zelda, but I will eventually. Writing books and marketing and stuff like that tends to take up a lot of your time. That, and I have a 2-year-old daughter. So, it's kind of the juggle game. Which one's more important at the moment? So tack on, I'm teaching high school chemistry. Free time's not Mr. Healy's, strong suit right now. So it is what it is.
Very nice. Very nice. So tell me about the fun socks.
The fun. Okay, so I can show
you. Yeah, tell me about the fun socks.
Let me show you. So I have my theme today is camping because my brother and I were going to go camping. So I have the lumberjack guy, And then
Nice.
on the other ones, I have like the standard compass, pocket knife, all of that stuff on there. I think there's a lantern in there. I don't actually know what that is. But anyways, so yeah, so I try to theme them up. I have Muppet socks and Goonie socks and Transformer socks and of course Flash socks. And
Right.
so I have quite a bit. It took me a while to start pairing them up. And finally I just like, you know what, I'm just going to throw them all in a drawer and just kind of randomly pick out what I get. Still try to theme it a little bit, but it is what it is. So.
So how'd you get into sock collecting and like kind of wearing the fun socks?
I don't know. I just kind of got tired of wearing the standard brown and black for your dress socks and stuff like that. And so I kind of got into like a Harlequin print that were a little different. And then that's when real fun socks really started to diverging and getting big, and like you got your themes. And so I started to buy just different socks, and I was like, this is ridiculous. I don't think I'll ever wear regular socks again. And so we actually there's a place in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. My wife and we just went on vacation with my daughter, and there's a sock store. Like, it's nothing, I mean, there's some other stuff, but it's like just socks. Like, you can get any type of dog sock, collegiate sock. I got some chemistry socks for this year, so yeah. They just
Nice.
Yeah. So that's I don't know how how do you get into collecting anything? You get one thing and then you're like, this is kind of cool, and then you kind of just start collecting, and yeah, that's how it
Before
works.
you know it, before your entire drawer is full.
Yeah, pretty much.
Very nice. Let's talk writing. So, what inspires you to become a writer, and in particularly like children's books in middle grade?
It. I didn't go to school to be a writer, so I went to school to be a child psychologist. Actually, I have my bachelor's in psychology, master's is in child development and family relations, and my plan was to go ahead and get my doctorate at some point in time. And the thesis, like the really big paper that you have to write for your master's and stuff, just super burned me out. And like by the time I was actually done, I was already married. My wife and I were in Atlanta, Georgia at the time, and I was just like, I'm just going to take a break. I'm just going to take a break and see what happens, and go from that. And it wasn't until about 6 years ago. Let me back up. It wasn't until about 11 years ago when I came up with the idea for my first novel, which is actually part of a series. It's Beyond the After, Princess Lillian. But it's all about Snow White, Cinderella, and Sleeping Beauty just 20 years later about their teenage daughters, where I kind of started to think, well, maybe I could do this. So it took me a while to finally get it off the table. Like I wrote a little bit and then I didn't for a long time. And then I wrote a little bit and I did for a long time. And then I finally got serious about it in 2014 when I was teaching science, 7th grade science. And it really was just all I did in my spare time. I went to school, I came home, I wrote, I was staying up late nights. I didn't play. This is the thing that catches when I do school visits. I talk to the kids about sacrifice. And, they don't really know what that is yet. They kind of understand a little bit. But when I tell them that I didn't play video games for 9 months, like their jaws hit the floor and they're like, what? How are you alive, Mr. Healy? Like, it's not something that they can comprehend. So while I was doing that, I can't draw to save my life. And my wife's in advertising. So she had a bunch of graphic designer and illustrator friends that I hired to do 3 of my just silly stories, honestly, that I had written. I grew up reading Shel Silverstein and love the guy. If you don't know who Shel Silverstein is, he did The Giving Tree and Where the Sidewalk Ends and Light in the Attic and like a whole bunch of other ones. He just has really silly, goofy poems that are just super entertaining. Anyways, so I had my friends illustrate 3 books, and they all kind of came out at the same time, June of 2015. So right around 6 years ago now. And then I kind of started writing the other series, and then I had some other books and some other poems that I got illustrated. And then recently I just had the new one, Penelope Rose Goes to India. Let's see if we're doing video. I might as well show it because it's a beautiful cover by my guy, Deshaun. I met him over Instagram, and he sent me some sketches. And actually, as a matter of fact, the sketches he sent, you can kind of see as the end caps. But I mean, he's super, super talented. I wouldn't be surprised if Disney picked him up one day because he really just has. I mean, you can see all the emotional expressions from the elephant here, but he's crazy talented, lives in Macedonia, all the way on the other side of the world from us. And yeah, and he was affordable. So I hired him on the spot, and then he just amazing work. And so yeah, so it's kind of, you just kind of fell into it. Like I didn't think I was ever going to be an author. I didn't go to school to be an author. um, I tell all the kids, I'm like, just so you know, I'm really bad at grammar and spelling. So my wife, who's really good at that, she knows all the rules, and my mom, they'll read stuff. But I do hire like a professional proofreader to go through my things and whatnot to make sure they look professional, because that's a big part of what I do. I try to look as professional as possible. I don't know. Let's see. I'll do like the barcode that looks professional, and then I have my publishing company, trademark, and all that stuff. So I could put Penelope Rose on any Barnes and Noble in the world, and it looked like any other book. Like you'd pick it off the shelf, and you just think it was a book that was in the store. So yeah,
And
that's
so
kind of a
let's
long
talk about
story, I
let's
guess.
talk.
Long short
Yeah,
story.
no, that's a good story though. But let's talk about the evolution of that. Like from that aha moment of wow, I'm actually writing something here. What do I do in terms of like becoming a first time published author to understanding how to produce a book, mass produce a book, and put it out there where people actually look at it and say that's amazing.
Man,
Like just kind of that evolution.
it's such you've just opened like the giant can of worms. Like it's not it's so, whenever I talk to people, my first question is, there's really three, if I can categorize the indie authors. So I guess as an author, you're doing it as a hobby, so you're literally just kind of doing it for friends and family. You're doing it for just a little bit of extra spending money in the month, or you want to do this for your job, like you want to write for the rest of your life. And then of course there's the traditional publishing. So when you're an indie author, it's like one of these three things. If you want to be traditionally published, that's a whole nother ball of wax that I'm not going to get into. um, and it's harder. Like you have to play the weight game. You have to get old agents, and you have to query letters to everybody's heard the story of how Stephen King and J.K. Rowling and like all these really famous authors, Dr. Seuss, were like turned down hundreds of times until finally somebody was like, yeah, this is good, let's go with this, and they are where they are. There's thousands of authors that never happens to. Like they just constantly keep getting turned down. So that's kind of the wall I was hitting with my Beyond the After, because I felt the strongest about that one. So the problem is like, well, what do you do? Like once you write a book, where do you go from there? And we still have people that ask that question in our Facebook groups. And the bottom line is you can really go one of two ways. You can either go what's called print on demand, or POD, which is what we call it, which Amazon and Ingram Spark are both the United States companies that will do that for you. Ingram Spark is an interesting company to work with. I'll leave it at that. But they're the only ones at the moment that do hardcover. I think Amazon, or KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, is what they're called. They are working on doing hardcovers, because I think so many authors have griped about Ingram Spark that they're like, okay, maybe we should start doing this for them. But Amazon has been doing paperback print on demand for a very long time. And somebody I talked to about my books was like, have you heard about this? And I was like, no. Because as an indie author, it's all expenses paid. Like you pay everything. You pay your illustrator, you pay your editor, you pay your proofreader, you pay if you're going to do mass printing, which I'll talk about. But so print on demand had a very strong allure to me, because it wasn't any money out of my pocket to get my books actually printed. And I can order author copies for cost to me or whatever, and then turn around and sell them for a profit. So that's what I did, and that's how I started. Anymore nowadays, I am heavy to suggest indie authors, to do the mass printing if they can. Not to give away like all of our trade secrets, but my paperback kids books at the moment cost me around $5, and I sell them for 10, which is pushing it. If you look at any book in Barnes and Noble, most of these aren't going to cost. They'll be like $3 or $4, just because those are getting mass printed. The Penelope Rose book, however, is costing me about half of that, and I'm able to charge 15, no problem, because it's hardback. So it's one of those things where, yeah, it's a lot more money. Like that, I ordered 2,100 books from a company here in the United States. I don't begrudge anybody that gets their books made in China, because it is cheaper, but I want to stimulate our economy versus China's. So if it's gonna cost me a little bit more, so be it. But I'm just proud to say, hey, they were printed and made in the United States and all that stuff. But other than that, mass printing is such a huge variance in profit. I can make double my money for the paperbacks I have now, or I can make 5 times the amount with the Penelope Rose, just because of how cheap it is to make it, and then how much and then the cool thing about that is it's actually, I think, to be honest with you, it is the cheapest book I have to give away for free. Like, I have one book that I'm actually really proud of. I'll show it, but this one here, the other side, this is my dedication to Shel Silverstein. An 8th grader actually drew all the pictures, which she was one of my students. She's in college now and, has grown up and stuff. But her name is Emma Pate, but she did all the illustrations because she kind of had that quirky style of drawing that I was looking for. So that one is pretty cheap, but that's because it's black and white. My color book, Penelope Rose, I can give away because it was so cheap to manufacture. So I can do deeper discounts on it. Like, I could do a 50% off if I wanted to, and I'm still making more than double my money. So it's just one of those things where it's like, you've got to eventually, it's where do you want to go with this in your life? Like, do you want to just do this as a hobby? Because I'm making some decent monthly spending money right now, but it's not where I want to be. 3 to 5 years from now, I want to be able to retire from teaching and do this full time. I've got the second book of Beyond the After. It came out in 2017. So a few years ago, and everybody's like, when's the third book coming out? When's the third book coming out? I was like, I have a 2-year-old daughter and I'm teaching high school chemistry. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't have the time to sit
Ask
down.
her.
And right. Well, and my answer is just like, well, how many books have you sold for me? Oh, well, I tell people about it sometimes. And I was like, no, the more people that buy my book, the quicker I can retire from teaching. Like, my family needs that income. And so it's just one of those things. But right now I'm working on, this summer, I'm hoping to work on another children's book, a different series, with my wife. And then I've got another middle grade series book that I'm working on. It's called Have You Seen This Dog? It's kind of like Goosebumps style. But I haven't had as much time to write on that as I've wanted to. But yeah, so it's just kind of one of those things where if I'd known about mass printing back when I first started, I probably would have run a Kickstarter, which Kickstarter was probably brand new 6 years ago. Nobody had heard of Kickstarter. Now everybody's heard of Kickstarter. Just to get that money, because I've sold about a little over 7,000 copies of Beyond the After, the first one. And the difference in profit is about $45,000. So, wow. It's kind of a big deal, and with that money I made from mass printing the first one, I know I could have mass printed all my other ones and stuff like that. So it's just one of those things. I didn't really have a mentor. I had one lady help me get into Kroger grocery stores, which is kind of an odd thing. People are like, you sell books in grocery stores? You do signings? I'm like, yeah, I mean, one, there's no competition because there's nobody else doing book signings in grocery stores. And 2, it was pretty lucrative for what I did. Now, granted, at the time I had 4 books, and then I had another 3 books come out. So about 7 or 8 books that I was selling. And they range all the way from early readers. So like my earliest reader is Missing Numbers. And then I have If Mom Became an Octopus, which is a super favorite of the moms and the kids. And just all the way up to like the different Little Lion and poem collections and stuff like that. So I have a wide variety of age range for reading levels for these kids. So I was doing well selling the books in Kroger grocery stores because I could hit basically everybody, even the young adults. I talk to the adults and I'm like, hey, come meet the kids out there. Oh, I don't have any kids. They're all grown up. I'm like, well, then let me introduce you to this because I have a lot of adults that read it and you would probably like it, and stuff like that. So I don't let them get away easy. I guess I should put it that way. But yeah, so I don't know, you just kind of fall into it and you see where it goes. The big aha. So like I had all these books, I got them printed, was when I was doing a signing outside of a coffee shop here in downtown Dallas. So when my wife and I actually lived downtown, I knew the guy, talked to him. He was totally cool with it. So I set up my little table, had my signs and stuff, and strangers started buying my books. It's one thing when you have your friends and family buying your books and supporting you and your teacher friends and stuff like that. But when somebody who you don't know from John Doe on the side of the street walks up and is like, "Oh, what's this?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm an author. These are my books," and they all look different, so it's kind of hard for them to believe that it's actually they're all mine, because I don't illustrate them. And then they buy one, and then somebody leaves a review that I don't know, or somebody sends me an email, and it keeps encouraging me to that this is what I'm supposed to. This is what God has called me to do. Apparently, I'm a very good storyteller. I'm just not good on the technical aspect of grammar and spelling and punctuation. But I can spin a yarn with the best.
No, but I don't think that's the most important thing. I think that's one of those barriers that people always come up with, like, well, I can't spell. I'm not good at grammar. It's like, that's what you have editors and proofreaders for. Just write.
Exactly.
You've got the stories.
Absolutely.
You don't need to worry about the technical aspects. If you've got the stories, there are people who will polish that for you. I mean,
Yeah,
that's what I do
absolutely.
professionally all day.
Well,
Edit
and
all
and I
day,
tell the
people
kids
send
when
me
I do school
stories, and
visits,
I'm always cleaning up.
yeah, when I do school visits, I tell them, I'm like, it's all about making mistakes. I'm like, how many of you have made mistakes? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, then you're going to make mistakes. Teachers, how many of you have made mistakes? Of course, the teachers raise their hand because they know what I'm doing, and we've all made mistakes. When I first printed the first Beyond the After, it had so many mistakes in it. Like, we had missed so many things. It's the size of the third Harry Potter book. It's 108,000 words. So things are going to be missed, but I missed a few things that were kind of crucial. So, I went back and picked, but that's also the beauty of print on demand. It's like, as soon as I want to change something, I just re-upload a new file. And just like that, overnight, Amazon's printing the new version of the book with the corrections. So that is one of the benefits of print on demand, is that you're at your own leisure. You can change things however you want, whenever you want, and you don't have to really wait on anybody. And it's the new version already. So
yeah, it's very forgiving like that.
Thankfully.
It absolutely is. And so for any of our listeners who want to know, kind of want to know a quick summary of some of the things that CM talked about, if you go to his website, author CM Healy, HEALY.com/budding-authors, he's got a whole breakdown of all these things, the various print on demand, the various things to do with ISBNs, Ingram Spark, Amazon. He's got the whole breakdown. Definitely go to the website, check it out. You'll learn a lot from it.
I was just going to say, that's where I definitely tell my people to go, because you can actually download the forms I use for the school visits. So like the letter I send out, the invoice that I use, and there's like free invoice generators, a flyer that I send to the schools. It's all about building the hype when you're going to schools. You definitely sell more books if the teachers and librarians have like read the stories to the kids and kind of built the hype of you coming in. Because then you walk in and you feel like a freaking celebrity, because the kids are like, "Oh my gosh, it's CM Healy!" So that's pretty cool feeling.
People don't realize how big Kroger is. Kroger's a massive grocery store, one.
Yeah.
Two, people shopping there are your target market. They're moms. They're your target market.
Yeah.
But three, our Kroger, the Kroger we had a gigantic upstairs cafe. So people would go up there and hang out and read books all the time.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
and
that's
drink
awesome.
coffee. So yeah, it does make sense to.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, is people are, don't put yourself in a box where you're like, oh, I got to do a book signing at a bookstore, or it's got to be a.
Yeah.
No, I did, your local events, like your trade shows. I did really well in a couple of those. Some I didn't. I started to cap my spending on a booth to $100, because I spent $250 one time for like the Dallas Food Festival, where you have like thousands and thousands of people come in, and I think I sold 12 books. So yeah, I say 12.
Yeah, it's all variable.
It was horrible. I was like, okay, I'm never doing this again. Like, it took my time. It was a whole weekend. I was like, we're done with this. So yeah, school visits for me are actually where it's very lucrative. So if you can get into it,
let's talk about that a little bit.
So basically, the hardest thing about getting into school is your follow-up. So I can actually spend the time to research a little bit. So like, get the names and the emails of the principal and librarian, write up. It's basically kind of a form letter. I don't rewrite the letter every time. I just kind of plug and play. I'll put their names in, I'll put the school name in, the mascot in, and whatnot, and basically say the same thing. And then I attach my school letter, which goes into more detail about my presentations and stuff like that, fees and whatnot. But it's just, the hardest part then is the follow-up. Like I said, I'm a teacher. Like, if I was just doing this on my own, like if I had known then, a few years ago when I quit teaching for a little bit, what I know now, it'd be I may not be teaching now. But that didn't happen. So right now, and I actually have a girl, her name is Brooke Young. She's my social media manager. And I pay her to do some work for me every week to either engage in Instagram. So it's kind of weird. Like the first time she started answering stuff for me, I saw all of this engagement. I was like, what is going on? I was like, oh, she's saying stuff for me. That's cool. Like it was kind of a weird thing to just kind of have this stranger talk for you.
Right.
But she's definitely going to help me get into more schools in the fall. COVID was such a weird year, obviously for everybody, for all kinds of different reasons. But it did open a door for me doing virtual visits. So again, don't close. Everybody started using Zoom and Google Meets. So open your mind to the different possibilities of what's out there. I did school visits all the way from New Jersey to California and New Mexico, Colorado, Oklahoma, Missouri. Every state in between, basically. And I didn't charge for it just because part of my goal is to get my books out there and get lifetime readers, lifetime fans, because again, I have the early readers, I have the young adult books, which go all the way up to adults, that love them. And then I'm going to start putting more stuff in the middle, which is kind of your middle grade style books that are going to be a little bit shorter and whatnot. But schools are definitely, when I go to a school, I get paid for my time. And then if the teachers have done their job, I sell anywhere between 50 to 100 books, which is a lot. For me, that's quite a bit. And then there's other times where I go to a school who they have no idea what they're doing. I still get paid for my time, thankfully. But they didn't really hype me up or do anything. And I sold maybe 10 books. So when I started off, I was completely free. I was like, I just want to get in, I just want to do my thing and I'll sell books and it'll be like that. And I ended up being like a glorified babysitter for like an hour and it was no good. So, you just kind of live and learn. I obviously I didn't lose a whole lot of money that way, but I learned. And then I finally went to another school because I was only charging like $200 per visit. And she snapped me up. And she goes, yeah, when I saw your fee, she goes, that was really low. I was like, well, would you do me a favor and just kind of analyze my presentation? Because I don't know what I'm worth, basically. I know I'm good. I know I engage the kids. They have a great time. I have a great time. But I didn't know what I could feasibly charge. And when I was done, she's like, you're not a well enough known name to charge like what I've paid for other authors. She goes, but you could easily charge $800. And I was like, whoa. So I don't charge that much now. So any of your listeners, I am going to have to start charging for virtual visits just because it is my time. And sometimes I do take off a whole day of school of me teaching. So it is one of my paid days off. But I probably won't charge as much. I don't know. It's kind of a tricky situation because it's new. It's new to all the authors. We're like, do we charge? Do we not charge? Nobody wants to be the bad guy and be like, yes, I'm charging full fee because, but you're not there. It's different. It's online. So I don't know. You gotta, I don't know, do the pros and cons, find the strengths and weaknesses of everything and see what works. Trial and error basically is what it comes down to.
Yeah. And so how does that work? So when you're writing your proposal or your form letter out to the school, do you basically put in, hey, this is who I am. This is what this is my book. This is what I do in my presentation. This is what I charge. Like how is it set up just for our listeners who may be curious to know how to do it?
Well, again, if you're super curious, go to my website, authorcmhealy.com/budding authors, and you can download the letter. Like I'm pretty free to give my resources. There's other authors out there that have like a patron page where people have to pay for their information. I'm not there yet. That's not really what I want. I barely have enough time to keep up with my own website, let alone my newsletter, let alone trying to charge people money and put up new material. So I'm pretty good with just, giving that information out for free for right now. It's not that big a deal. Will I charge later on down the road? Probably not. It's one of those things where I don't know. I want to help other authors. Like that's one of my biggest deal. And if you are an author, if you're a budding author and you're listening to this, reach out to me. Super easy. authorcmhealy at gmail.com and get in touch with me. I have a program where I take, new authors under my wing. I've got tons of ISBNs, which you do need a real ISBN. Amazon, again, will give them to you for free, but they're kind of in control of it. But yeah, so going back to your original question, I basically introduce myself, say that for one, where I'm from. So I basically say Dallas, or if I say Mesquite, they know where that is too. talk about my background just a little bit. And then for me specifically, I do talk about the TEKS, or the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, which is what we all go by here, all the way from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade, of what they're supposed to learn, what they're supposed to master before they leave that subject. So I talk about that. I do mention my books. I definitely mention my fee. That's where I get into the nitty gritty and tell them, it's 400. So I don't mind saying it. It's 400 for a full day, which a full day for me is a little different. Some authors do just an assembly, like they'll do the whole school assembly. For me, since my master's is in child development, I know that the students' minds are so different. Like I can hold the attention of fourth and fifth graders for 45 minutes to an hour, easy. Mm-hmm. Kindergarten, first grade, half an hour's pushing it. Like I do a lot of interactive stuff. Like I do an interactive reading with If Mom Became an Octopus. I play the banjo for them. We do a dance. I don't care what grade you're in. Everybody gets the booger song. So that's another fun one. But yeah, so it's just one of those things where I'll do up to six presentations, about an hour long. So depending on the size of school, we can either break it up per grade level, or I can pair up kindergarten and first grade, second and third grade, third and fourth grade. So like that. And yeah, so all the details are in there, and at the very bottom, I say, thank you, please let me know. And then just to top it off, I do have librarians send me reviews of what they thought of my program. And kids, if I can get it, kids are a little harder, but yeah. So I try to post them from around the nation. Like I said, I've got ones from Georgia, Oklahoma, here in Texas, obviously, Missouri, I think Colorado. Yeah, but I just put a few. I just shuffle them in there just to show that, hey, I'm not just a local author doing local visits. Like I've done visits all over the place. And now that I have virtual visits, I have started adding those to the letter as well to show, hey, not only is this guy good, in person, but he does a really good virtual presentation. So it's not like the kids are going to be like, another Zoom, I got to get online. I actually keep them engaged and talk a little bit and stuff like that. So.
Nice. And now, is there any sort of like prerequisite that the school like purchase copies of the books for students, or purchase copies for the library, or?
No, not for me. Every author is different. I have another
Okay.
author friend who he's a good author. Don't get me wrong. But he is business oriented, like laser focused. He has his own printing business where he works with a printing company, or I guess publishing business, where he works with a company in China. And now he's recently opened, I don't mind giving him props because my books are on there, and then tons of indie authors are on his. It's okiebees.com, OAKIEBEES.com. And, for those of us who got in early, it was really cheap and we put our books up there. I am more focused on getting people to buy my books through me for two reasons. One, I make more money, way more money, because he does take 50%, but it's less than what Amazon takes. And then two, you get the books signed. So, I mean, like win-win for me and you, basically. So yeah, so it's just one of those things. So again, if you're an author and you're wanting to do something, I'm taking authors under my wing to give them an ISBN, use my trademark. We'll talk about your cover. I want you to look, you're representing my company, so I want you to look as professional as possible. So yeah, and it's super cheap. Like one ISBN is going to cost you $125. I'm not charging that. For the actually, I'll give you 3 ISBNs and all of my knowledge that I have, which isn't a lot compared to some other people, but it's more than most. Yeah, and so you get to pick my brain and all that stuff. So that's one of those things where you can join up with me if it's something you're interested in, and I don't take royalties. Like, again, I'm not here to take your piece of the pie. I'm here to help you get more pie, basically, if you can. So, and again, make me look better. And one of the, I guess, the less altruistic thing that I'm doing is once you have 5 authors under your company, you're considered a small press, and you can start entering different contests for free. So there's a lot of contests that you either have to pay for, or for reviews you have to pay for. If you're considered a small press, you don't have to pay for those. So that's another money saving thing for you and me and everybody else to try and get your name out there and get some more awards attached to your books and whatnot. So
That's very cool, though. I didn't know about the small press thing. That's
I
new
didn't either.
information.
I
Yeah.
wanted to do this category or this contest, and they're like, if you have to be a small press. I was like, well, what's a small press? Like, what does that constitute? And boop, 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 Google. It's like small press is 5 or more authors. Five and something else. And I was like, so okay. So I've already got one. I've got another girl that's interested. I haven't really been pushing that as much, just simply because there's so much to do. Like one of them is getting my Penelope Rose book in paperback uploaded to Amazon and Ingram Spark so I can start doing advertising and so people can buy it, blah, blah, blah. I've probably got now 1,500 books still sitting in my garage that I want to get out. So I want people to buy them. So not only can I make the money back and get more copies of Penelope Rose, but so I can afford to get my other books in mass print slowly but surely, where I can just start making money. And then, so back to, sorry, I get off on tangents all the time because you asked the question, is there a prerequisite to get me in your school? For me, the answer is no. Going back to Jay Maletsky, the answer is he will have, if a school buys 50 books at list price, so I think they're like $17, $18, any of his books at list price, then he will come to a completely free school visit. Now, the cool thing about that is, and you're like, wow, that's not very many books. Well, the math is, that's about $750 for the school. He is maybe paying, let's just grossly overestimate. Because he's ordering books 80,000 copies at a time, right? So most of us aren't quite there yet. Anyways, but so he's probably, let's just say he's getting them at $2 a book. So that's $100 it's costing him, right? So they buy his books, it's costing him $100. He's just made $650, on top of, he's going to go to the school and sell more books,
And
So,
he's put 100 books in people's hands who now converts more readers.
Which
It's
is,
just,
for me,
it's like spreading seeds,
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, that's why I've started to lean towards more like I have 10 books, four of them, I guess, because I have Penelope Rose, which I know it looks different. It's a completely different illustrator. So I have 4 books that are part of a series. The other 6 are just one-offs, one shoots. So that's why I'm starting to focus on series books. Penelope Rose being one. Obviously, I've already got Beyond the After. Have You Seen This Dog is going to be a series of at least 5 books, probably. The new one, which is kind of a spin on a classic that we all know and love, is going to be a series, and again, another 5 books about problem solving and deductive reasoning. So Jay will do that. And so, getting the readers, again, my job and his job as well. His job is to make money. That's why he's doing everything he's doing. And he's doing very well for himself. But since his books are so cheap, and since mine are so cheap, he gave away a few books. A set of grandparents bought breakfast for he and his daughter the other day in a diner. And so just to thank him, he gave them signed books to their grandchildren. Well, there was just happened to be coincidence. There was a elementary school principal there. And she's like, hey, do you do school visits? And he's like, absolutely. So he gave her a few books, and he said, the moral of the story is, he goes, I maybe gave away $40 worth of material. He goes, but now I've got a school visit booked. And so I've made that money back just like that. So that's kind of where I'd like to get to, because the other thing is having a school pay for your fee, like your author's fee. It's not horrible, and most places are pretty easy to get into. But if they're trying to justify buying books, way easier. I mean, they go to the PTA and say, hey, if we buy this guy's books, he'll come and do a free author visit. Win for everybody, right? I mean, it's a win for the school. It's a win for the author, big time. So that's where I'm trying to get. Unfortunately, I can't quite do that. I mean, I technically I could, but I'm not going to make as much money. I just want to get a couple more books mass printed before I start doing that. And, and then I'll go from there and make what I can. But anyways, I've already got an author visit lined up for next year. I'm super excited. And speaking of kind of giving away stuff, I auctioned off an author visit, and was it a set of my books, or at least 4 of my books signed, and a local librarian who's actually part of my district bought the books. And so she got in contact with me, and she's like, hey, I bought your books. I'm super excited. They look great. What do we do for the author visit? Because it was like in May when everything happened. So I said, well, you don't have to do it this year, obviously, because we still had STAR testing and, the state tests that everybody dreads. I said, the other thing I can do is, I can do a full author visit. I do have a fee and stuff. So I sent her the letter and she goes, your fees are wonderful. We'll get you down for next year. And I was like, sweet, and I told her, because she did spend money on the author visit, like, I'll either donate books to the library that equates that much, or I'm going to be super helpful, because she's going to get me $400,
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's, and that's not even money out of my pocket at all for the books. So yeah, you just never know. I always have books in my car. Almost always, I didn't have any because I was in a different car, but 99% of the time I have my cards with me. So I have my business card with me. So I tell people about it. I'm like, hey, I'm a children's author. I have free YouTube read along. I have free worksheets they can download, all kinds of stuff just to get them in the door. Because if it's free, and here's another freebie for your fans, authorcmhealy.com/freebies. You'll sign up for my newsletter, but it'll take you to a place where you can download the Octopus ebook, the Octopus song, the Octopus, or is it just those two? I think there's 3 things. Oh, the read aloud. Yeah, the ebook, the read aloud, the song, and then the coveted booger song. So there you go. Right. So that's the big thing. So yeah. So if you go to authorcmhealy.com/freebies, you'll get those 4 free things just for nothing else, and sign up for my newsletter, which I haven't sent out in probably 6 months because I'm just that far behind. But I do give away free books every month. So every month I draw a random name from my list of newsletter people, and they win a book. Free shipping, don't care where you live, any of that stuff, it doesn't matter. So you get a free signed book from me, and yeah, it's really there's no losing situation for anybody that goes to sign up for this thing, except for getting one more email once a month at the least, maybe 2 if I actually start getting on board and start doing it. But there's more important things to do. I know my fans like to hear from me and see my stuff, because I'll put pictures of my daughter and stuff like that, and just kind of what I've been up to and everything. But that's why I hired Brooke, my social media manager, to take care of these things for me. And maybe one day she'll take over my newsletter, and I'll pay her for that, because I like doing it. I like sharing, but it's so time. It could take me an hour, which doesn't seem like a lot of time. But when I got books to write and just other important things, getting my books uploaded, doing marketing for my books, all the stuff that it entails, being your own boss, basically, it's a lot of time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And so we'll kind of coming in a landing talking about that very thing, the idea of just indie authors and professionalism. I want to hear kind of your take on why that's so important, that indie authors take their professionalism very seriously, especially as it pertains to their cover, their layouts, just those things that make them competitive in the marketplace.
Yeah, and again, it comes down to, why are you doing this? For me, I talked to a girl one time at a book event, and I was telling her about, I want to get in libraries. Like, I want my books to be look so professional. And some libraries don't want to even take a book unless it's hardback. So all of my kids' books are paperback. So that's a nick. So that's why I'm trying to get them mass printed hardback. But it just comes down to what are you trying to do? I had a girl sign up with me to do my Mercury West publishing. She got under me and stuff. And we just told her, we was like, hey, the cover's good, but it needs polishing. It still looks self-published. And she got really offended by it, because she stopped doing anything with me. Next thing I know, she's made her own publishing company. She's actually got people signed up for her, and she's helping them. And I'm like, that's great, but you don't know what you're doing. Like, I can appreciate it. We actually just had a writers contest, a writers conference, and one of the contest entries was for book cover. And it was I was like, this is ridiculous. What are you guys doing? Like, I don't understand this. Like, if you can't do it well, don't do it. I don't do my book covers because they would suck. My wife does it. My wife did both Beyond the After covers. She went, this isn't even one image. This is like 4 or 5 images she pulled off, the internet. and photoshopped them all together so that they blended well, and then added the, the stuff and everything. So it looks professional. But she also did research. She went to Barnes and Noble. She looked at the #1 bestsellers. She looked at what their titles look like, what their authors look like. I mean, for crying out loud, I don't even know why I have a pine cone there, but I do. And it looks professional, So
Right.
it's just one of those things where I, what do you want to do with this? Do you want to retire? Is it just a hobby? Are you trying to impress anybody? Are you trying to get traditionally published? It's important, whenever, and I'll actually show you this one because I'll show you the difference. So this one is one of the free ISBNs, and you can see the 9,000 right there.
Yep.
To anybody that's published any book at all, that 9,000, that's a easy giveaway. Oh, they're self-published. Bingo. My new book, and of course, my newer books now don't have that because I've uploaded my new book. You can see it doesn't look like that at all. And this little USA price up here, I photoshopped that in to make it look more professional, so it didn't come like that. So it's all these these little things to pay attention to the details. You'd be surprised when you watch movies. Like if you watch movies that didn't pay attention to detail, you'd be like, oh, this is crap. Obviously
Right.
they didn't go to the links. One of my most favorite directors is Guillermo del Toro. I never can say his name, but he's amazing. Pan's Labyrinth, Hellboys. Just the attention to detail that he puts into his movies is magnificent. It's like watching art. I mean, it is art, but it's just beautiful. And you notice it. You notice when there's things that aren't quite up to par. So it comes down to you. It comes down to what you want to accomplish in this business. Are you fine doing little events on weekends to make some little extra spending money, or are you going to take it serious and want to be part of the big boys? It just kind of
Yeah.
depends.
No, I think that's true. Like I tell people that I coach all the time, I tell them whether you like it or not, you're competing with the big 4, big 5 publishers. Doesn't matter
Yeah.
whether you think you are or not. You're
Yeah.
competing
Oh,
because
yeah.
you're putting
Absolutely.
books together. So why not go all out? Why not give your very best effort
Yeah.
and try to come up with the best possible cover, the best possible layout, just make it look as professional as possible? Because the thing is that even to the average person who is just a reader or just a casual reader who has a completely untrained eye for anything, like specific and technical, they can tell. You can pick up on that.
Oh, yeah. You can
I can pick
absolutely
up a
tell.
book, open up a book, and I look at the margins. I'm like, there's something off, and you
Right.
know it. A reader knows that there's something off, or they look at the back of the book. And like, there's something off.
Right.
And so
It's not quite right. And that's what I tried to tell my
yeah,
friend. I just told her, I was like, look, it's not a lot. I was like, we need to change the font. We need to make it smoother, basically.
yeah,
And, on the backside, you need to break this up. It was one giant chunk of text. And I was like, you got to make it bigger so it's easier to read. 2, you've got to break this up. Like you've got to
yeah,
break this up a little bit. And, we're still friends. Don't get me wrong. And she's super supportive of me. And I try not to be, I'm not jealous of her, but just kind of a little jaded that I'm like, wow, really? Like you couldn't take my advice? Like you paid for my advice. And as soon as I tell you, you're like, that can't be right. I know what I'm talking about. Not to the extent of,
yeah.
I will say this. I had, for the Beyond the After, I started off with a prologue story, and it's like 3 different prologues. Nobody does that. Like, it's like you
Mm-hmm.
never start the story with, a little side story and stuff like that. I'm like, but that's how I want it to be. And I kid you not, an agent from New York loved the idea, took my book, flipped through it, and started looking at it. He's like, oh no, we'd have to get rid of all this. And I was like, you haven't even read the story, man. Like, you don't even know how it sets up the story for, I'm like, could I do flashbacks? Absolutely. But everybody does flashbacks. Like, I'm not the guy that fits into that mold of it has to be done this way. And I'm like, if I went with a traditional publisher, they would absolutely force me to change it. Probably
Mm-hmm.
change the cover, probably change all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, that's not that important to me. Some
Yeah,
people get into this business to get recognized and get traditionally published. That is their goal. I don't care. I've talked to enough really famous authors to know that are traditionally published that are like, as soon as I can get out of my contract, I'm going back to me being me. So I don't have somebody telling me what to do, when I need to do it, being on a super hard deadline and just writing. It'd probably help me get my books out on time if somebody was cracking the whip saying, we're taking your money if you don't write this book.
right.
but I'm glad I'm not. I'm glad I'm not in that forced position to and I can just kind of do it at my own pace, and that's the thing I've seen a lot of times where authors get like super frustrated or upset that they're not going at the speed that they see other authors. Like I have author friends, they're putting out 2, 3, 4, 5 books in 6 months. I mean, they're okay. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking these authors at all, but they're not novels, they're kids' books, but they've got their illustrators just popping them out super fast. They're doing Kickstarters all the time. They're done with one book, and the next thing I know, they're already, before they're even done with the next book, they're publicizing the next book that's coming out. I don't want to be in that kind of mindset where I just can't slow down. Especially, and they don't have 2-year-old kids either. Like that's a difference, or they don't even have full-time jobs, so it's a huge difference. So you got to take everybody's life into account when you're thinking about how are you doing, and is it on pace for what you're doing? Could I be more, not motivated, productive? Yes, absolutely. There are times when I get overwhelmed by everything and I just sit and do nothing, and it hurts me. I chastise myself. It doesn't change anything because I still don't do it, but it's one of those things where you just got to do what you got to do. It took me 5 years to write that novel, and then mostly 9 months, and then it took me another 9 months to write the other. So the third book's going to come out when it comes out. Here's another big tip for anybody that's doing any type of your own business: start collecting emails. But I'm not doing a newsletter. Don't care. Start now because, like I mentioned before, I've sold 7,000 copies of Beyond the After. I probably got 100 emails from those people. So when the second book came out, I couldn't do a news blast, be like, hey, second book's out, everybody go grab it. They may know, they may not. My first book may be collecting dust on their thing and be like, hey, I wonder if that guy ever wrote any more books. Oh, he did? Great. So I'll get like 1 or 2 or 3 sales a month, take care of that. But yeah, start collecting emails. It was one of the biggest mistakes I think I made when I was at Kroger grocery stores, all over the place, when I was doing school visits, nothing. Make them write it down too. I even have a QR code on my new form so they can just go to freebies, right? It takes them right to freebies. They sign up for their newsletter. Smart. But they don't do it. When people, it's the psychology of people is so weird. When they see email and a blank line, they assume they have to fill it in. For some reason, it doesn't say that, but they do it. And then you have to decipher their penmanship and, put it in manually yourself. But anyways, yeah. So if any of your listeners, or if you figure out a very easy way to electronically collect emails, let me know. Send me an email. DM me.
I will. That'd be awesome.
It's so frustrating. It's such a waste of time, but you need them. You need those emails.
Yeah. And lastly, like, what's been like your greatest encouragement as a writer? Like, what's really kept you going over the years?
It's, I'd say my mom, but mom's going to say whatever mom say to boost you up, right? You're always the best, the smartest, the prettiest, all that stuff. It's really been either reviews or emails from complete strangers. When I'm not expecting it, when I'm not looking for it, I've gotten a review. I read a review from a lady. It was her 13-year-old son who was reading Beyond the After. So I know I said it's about princesses, 20 years later about their teenage daughters, but I have boys that love this. It's very similar to Harry Potter, where you have just boys and girls that just love it, and men and, and adults too. So, but she wrote about how her 13-year-old son would go up in his room, read a chapter a night, and then come down and tell her all about the chapter and what's going on with the characters and what happened and, all this stuff. And she goes, thank you, CM, for creating these priceless memories with me and my son. And I was like, wow, like I still pick up this book and I'm like, did I really write this? Like, this is a lot of words, so big. And I got an email from another guy who said, thanks for writing it. English is not my native language. This is the first book I have completely finished in English because it was so good. And I was like, wow, like seriously, like I know I'm a good storyteller and I know my books are good, but just for somebody to come out and let me know, to take the time, first off, take the time, because nobody takes the time for anybody else these days, which is sad, but to take the time to actually sit down and email me how much he appreciated my book just meant the world. I mean, it was just amazing. I had all of these usually have to do with Beyond the After because it's my most popular book. I had a girl when I was doing Kroger visits down in Houston. Her mom bought the books for me. She fell in love with the books, did an author presentation about me. So like all the kids had to pick an author that they wanted to do a presentation about. She dressed up like Princess Lillian in her like little forest garb and stuff like that. Same in the picture. I mean, it's hard. It's heartwarming. It's like, what do you do? You know, like this is, to me, this is God saying, I know things are rough. I know you don't have a lot of time right now, but keep going. Like it's important that maybe not these books, you know, it may be books down the road. It may be a fan that you meet that is just, you know, the world to them. And you'll never know until years later or whatever, until like, again, I know Shel Silverstein's not here anymore, but, you know, I dedicated my book to Shel Silverstein for influencing my childhood, for influencing basically how I write. And, you know, actually I take that back. I do. It's very small and minuscule. I don't have the book with me, but one of my friends from college, she always has her class. We always do a virtual visit or something like that. We did one this year, and her class, they wrote their own book. What kind of animal would you want to be? So each class, and it was one of those kind of self-published printers that they can do.
Yeah.
They dedicated, and it's not even like written in dedicated to CM Healy. It is literally printed in the book. Every single copy that anybody will buy is dedicated to me. And I'm like, golly, that's crazy. These are first and second and third graders that are just, you know, and I get it. I mean, like they think I'm big and famous, right? Because I'm on the TV and stuff. And hopefully, and that's always my goal, is to like anybody who's bought a signed book is to become so big and famous that they'll go back and be like, look, I have a book signed by CM Healy back when he was starting. But that's what motivates me. That's what keeps me going. And it's usually when I'm feeling the most depressed and the most overwhelmed and the most, I don't want to do this. I will do this for everybody who's going to buy Beyond the After. I promise. I know how the book is going to end, the whole series. Don't worry. It's going to go. I'm not going to be like George R. R. Martin and just stop. But anyway, but I will get to it. But it's usually then when I get the email or I get the picture or I get the review that somebody is just like, thank you so much for writing this book. It's awesome. Exactly what I needed. It's helped my son who didn't like to read, or my daughter, whoever, you know, they finally finished a chapter book and they're super excited. And then they want the second book. So, you know, that's what keeps me going. You know, my ultimate goal before my daughter was born was, I don't want to miss a dance recital or a sport event or some school, whatever the case may be. I didn't want to be in a position where I had to do my work or whatever the case may be and miss it. And so before she was even born, I was like, I'm going to start doing this now so that when she's old enough, you know, when she's 5, 6, 7, or when she does start to get into those activities, I won't be teaching. I can just stop. I can just stop writing. I don't have to do this today. I can go take her to her practice, take her to her recital, you know, and do all of those things. Because my wife is probably going to still be working for a while until I can make enough money for both of us. You know, it'll be a little bit, but I don't want to be in that position where I have to say, I'm sorry. We call her Peep. That's her nickname we use for online. That was her nickname we gave to her, but we don't actually, her name is not actually Peep. But I don't have to say, I'm sorry, Peep, I can't come because I have to work. You know, what a devastating, a child doesn't understand that. And the sadness that would come from her eyes is just, you know, unfortunately, and, you know, I still have memories of my parents sometimes not being able to make what I was doing. And it stuck with me. It still sticks with me today. I'm not like depressed and disappointed. I'm not going to therapy over it. But it's something that I hold on to, and it's motivation enough for me to not do that to my kids. Is it going to happen? I'm sure there's going to be a time where I have to say no. Something that I'm going to be on a book tour or something, but the least amount that I can do at the possible, the better.
Nice. And so how can our audience reach you? What's the best way to contact you?
Go to my website. Everything is author CM Healy something. So authorcmhealy.com, you can contact me, and there's links to all my, you know, Instagram, Facebook, email, my email, author CM Healy. And if you're not hearing us quite right, CM, coconut marshmallow. The kids came up with this. They're like, what does CM stand for? And I was like, I didn't want to tell them my full legal name. So I was like, they're like, coconut marshmallow. I was like, sold. Coconut marshmallow it is, because everybody hears those and they know exactly what letters we're talking about. So author CM Healy at gmail.com. Instagram is at author CM Healy. I always have my cool author hat on. So it's all about branding. You got a brand. So everything's author CM Healy, this or that. that. But yeah, so I'm really good about responding to emails. So if you have questions, if you're an author, go to my budding author website, check it out, read through it. If you still have questions, email me. I'll be happy to email you back and give you as much help and advice as I possibly can.
Awesome. Hey, well, thanks for joining me today, man. You shared a lot of great stuff.
I appreciate you having me on. It's been a blast. I love talking about this.
Yeah, it's all good, man. Well, you guys, hey, have a great day and you take care.
All right. Thanks so much, Chris. I appreciate it.
How's that for inspiring? I hope you take action on one thing you learned in today's episode. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast and left a review on iTunes, I want to encourage you to do that too. Finally, be sure to visit chrisjonesinc.com to sign up for updates. Don't worry, I won't spam you. And we'll see you back here next week for another episode.